Hey everyone, Nazori here with another quick boss guide for Throne and Liberty. This one will be for Chimaerus of the Temple of Slaughter. This one is honestly quite hard. I'm going to go over everything you need to know to get this done, but if you're stuck on this boss, don't feel bad. This boss is actually quite a challenge, and I've seen people who know the mechanics well and still tend to wipe several times. But anyways, let's just jump right into it so we can make this quick. The tank should pick up aggro from Rex, and an important tank note here is if you lose aggro for any reason to a ranged player, or if you move away from Rex, he will leap and AoE stun the area of the player he is leaping to. So keep in mind, if you want to move him, you will receive a stun for doing so. During the initial phase, Rex is going to launch a few acid and fire pools. Now, obviously, as with any boss, don't stand in the fire. But these pools do not seem to do a ton of damage when standing in them, but they do add a fairly potent damage over time. So don't underestimate the damage on there. Keep moving when the boss is firing to avoid them as much as possible. After a short time from initial aggro, Rex is going to spawn launch Pitons around the arena. These Pitons are required to launch up to the top middle in order to pull the lever. A small note, if you're watching this while doing the non-level 50 version of this dungeon, this is a level 50 specific mechanic. So you won't see this in the level 20 or 30. It might be 30. I can't remember. That dungeon doesn't have it. A DPS or two should be designated to do this mechanic, as the healer and the tank are not great candidates due to the fireball mechanics being back to back with this mechanic later in the fight. But if everything is under control as a tank, you can leap up. It just can kind of overwhelm as you're going to be back to back with different mechanics at times. In order to reach the top middle, the player should launch from the ground Piton, then bird form, then launch in the air from the air Piton, then bird form again, then land in the middle. This can be tricky, and the game's verticality is sometimes, how do I put this? Total ball sacks. So having two DPS designated to do this is a safe bet. After the lever in the middle is hit, two of the lower levels must be pulled. Other DPS or the healer and the tank can pop these when required. All players should be aware of this mechanic to ensure a fast reaction time, because shortly after the initial Piton spawn, Rex does an area-wide semicircle AoE that wipes the group. I'm fairly sure that the acid side of this semicircle is slightly less painful, so if possible, DPS and healer should be positioned behind the boss during this, but honestly, just not letting him use the move is probably the best bet, because you can get this thing done way before he starts blasting. After the initial Piton mechanic, Rex will go back into another DPS phase. This will come with multiple shots of acid pools and then a fury attack. This and all other fury attacks indicate that Rex is about to mark a party member. This is the fireball mechanic. The mark looks like a green beam of light, and the best way to watch for this is just to be aware that it comes out right after the fury attack every time. The marked player needs to step far away from the boss and potentially behind the tank if possible, before 3 large fireballs are launched at the player. These fireballs do around 3,000 to 5,000 damage typically, and have a wide AoE around the target it hits. If the marked player is hit, they received extra damage and is almost always an instant death. I think we saw like 25,000 damage on those hits. So literally, if you have the mark and you get hit by the fireball, you are dead. So a player, preferably the tank, needs to grab at least the first 2 fireballs. If the marked player is full health, he can usually take the 3rd fireball, since the mark wears off right before the 3rd fireball hits. And an important note here is the tank can probably handle 3 fireballs initially, but the dot damage that comes with that is extreme. I'm talking like 20 to 30,000 HP in 10 seconds if unmitigated. You can heal through this with big cooldowns from the healer, but it's best just to not take 3 fireballs. The difference in the dot damage from 2 to 3 is so extreme. I am like 99% sure it's just an intentional mechanic to prevent the tank from being able to soak all 3. So if possible, only take 2 and give the 3rd one to the DPS or the mark target. Also, another small note is I'm fairly sure the mana barrier from the staff completely mitigates all dot damage. So if you happen to be sword and board and staff, that's a pretty good strategy for avoiding the dot damage afterwards. I haven't fully confirmed this on why it doesn't do any dot damage, but I'm pretty sure it's unintentional, but definitely something worth noting. After this fireball mechanic, Rex will pretty quickly go back into another Piton phase, so be ready for this. The DPS should be ready to launch back up and hit the levers. But the fight is essentially just a rinse and repeat from here. The delay between Pitons starting and finishing and fireballs is varied as the boss rotates his mechanic cooldowns, so just be on your guard for each one of these 2 mechanics, and you should be able to clear him relatively easily. But that's pretty much it. As usual, if you have any questions or just looking for some streaming content, you can find me on Twitch as I stream almost every night at twitch.tv/Nazori. And if this video helped you out, help me out by giving it a thumbs up or a comment. I would absolutely appreciate it. Anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we will see you around.